All right. Good evening and welcome, everyone. We are on Bitachon blast number 11, called "The Perspective on Money," and this is where the we always say the expression "put your mouth where your money is," or "put your money where your mouth is." So this is where Bitachon really becomes very personal. There's a famous story that Rav Meir Shapiro, the founder of Daf Yomi, was a very, very sharp man, and he used to collect money for his yeshiva all over Europe. He had no children. He wasn't able to have children, him and his wife, so they really invested their time into Klal Yisrael. And when he would collect, he would give very sharp rebuke. So one time he said there's a famous Gemara that he doesn't understand what's the big compliment. The Gemara in Shabbos, actually, we did in Daf Yomi, it says that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was so holy that he never put his hands below his belt. So he said, I have lots of Baal Batim like this too. Whenever I ask for money in tzedakah, they also never put their hands below their belt. So I don't know what the big compliment is. Most people are like that. So when it comes to Bitachon, it's something that when it hits the wallet, that's when, for many people, it stops being practical and stops being practiced. But this is what we're really trying for. So Rav Asher says, we learn that the Kadosh Baruch Hu's hanhaga with us is dependent on the degree of your reliance only on him. We also talked about how the alchemist is outdone by the Baal Bitachon. Chovos HaLevavos now talks about the physical, emotional, and spiritual benefits of Bitachon. The Bateach learns to be free of headaches, worries, ulcers, and high blood pressure, which is great. And also has spiritual benefits that he becomes an Oved Hashem, a true servant of Hashem. He's liberated from a life living, and he's liberated to live a life based on ideals. So this is a very famous part of Chovos HaLevavos as well. It's called appointee. Chovos HaLevavos says, the Baal Bitachon gives charity with his money because he's not afraid and worried about the future. If he has money, he quickly uses it to fulfill his obligation to help others. By the way, there's a halacha that many people don't know about that technically you're not really supposed to hold on to tzedakah money long term. There's different opinions about what that is, but most people say that it's shalosh regalim, that from when the time that you earned it till you give it to the poor person that needs it, you should give it to them within 3 regalim of when you earned it. This is based on different Gemaras and Rosh Hashanah and other places that say that there's a isser of bal ta'achar, of delaying things. But anyway, so we don't want to hold on to money for too long. So he's convinced that this. So if he has money, he quickly uses it to fulfill his obligation to help others. If the Boteach has no money, he's convinced that this is a kindness of Hashem, as he is now freed of financial obligations towards others. A person with money is filled with fear about making more, maintaining it, or giving it away appropriately, and taking care of his own needs. In Avos 2:7 it says, the more property you have, mar b'dechasim mar b'daga, the more worry you have. Thus, if one has no property, he has no worries. One of the Hasidim would pray to Hashem, God, please save me from being scattered. What does that mean, says Rabbeinu Bachya? I don't want properties everywhere that will make my mind fragmented. Thus, one who is Boteach on Hashem gets the gift of security because he gets his daily needs fulfilled without having to worry about watching over his wealth. As Shlomo states, the rich man's property prevents him from sleeping. And Rav Asher was always pointing out to us, how many rich people do you know who live carefree lives? Many of them have tremendous stressors. They're worried about their wealth, or they're worried about their physical safety, or their family's physical safety. Chovos HaLevavos says, Boteach is blessed in that his money does not stop him from relying on Hashem. That's an amazing statement. If someone does have money, or someone doesn't have money, that's all an opportunity to connect to Hashem. Mesilas Yesharim says Rav Asher, all situations are a challenge for a person. Osher, wealth, on the one hand, is distracting, and Oni, being destitute, is a challenge as well. Now, Rav Asher says, and this is actually a famous debate in philosophers, so if I were to ask you which is more difficult, being rich or being poor, my experience has shown that the sign of wealth is very difficult to pass, perhaps even more so than poverty. This can be argued, but either way, the Boteach puts his trust in Hashem. Rav Asher tells over the altar in Vardik, Rav Yosef Yezel Horowitz, that's all, 1847 to 1919, did not feel that his Talmidim would be able to withstand the challenge of wealth. So he gave them all a bracha gedola ad ma'od, a magnificent blessing, that all of his Talmidim, until the end of their days, should be poor and not have the test of money. This is why no one today is willing to be a Navardiker. They are mavater on this big bracha that he gave. But many people did get this bracha without being a Talmud, and we need to learn how to serve Hashem with whatever financial situation he puts us in. The Alter himself gave up his own lucrative garment business, dedicated himself solely to Torah. When his Talmud, Rav Yoel Bramchik, opened up a store, the Alter blessed him that a fire should destroy his merchandise without hurting anybody, so that he should return to his full-time learning, which is exactly what happened. When Rav Yerucham Worftig left his position as a Rebbe in Navardik to open a business, the Alter blessed him that he should fail and be forced to return to learning and teaching. This is how he blessed all of his Talmidim, and the blessings often came true. See Sefer Tnuas HaMusar, Volume 4, page 199, all about the Alter in Navardik. Chovos HaLevavos says, if Hashem gives you money, it is to be seen as a collateral which Hashem provides you with for the use for specific conditions, specific goals, and specific amounts of time. Don't go around telling people, I'm so great because of my charity. Rather, you must see yourself as a bank teller who gives out money which does not belong to you. And the Rusher tells over a story that really illustrates this well. I'll never forget when I was a little boy collecting money for Pilim. I rode around for Rockaway on my bike at age 11. Most people gave me about a quarter. That was a standard donation back then. I went to one rich person's house and he gave me $15. That was a small fortune back then, like in 1953, which is about the time of the year. That was like worth $140. I looked at him in shock. He said to me with a smile, "What's your surprise? When you go into a bank and you fill out a withdrawal slip, they give you exactly what you asked for. Hashem blessed me with money. It's not mine. I am simply the teller who must give it out to those in need. You came to my house collecting for a worthy cause, so you have nothing to be surprised about." So as a Rusher, this is an accurate perspective, and I wish that more people, that there were more people like him. It made a great impact on me that I still remember the story. He must have learned Shar Bitachon because this is the exact point stated here. He lived it. Now I bring in an editor's note. See Matnas Chalko, which is the Sefer of Rav Matziyahu Solomon, Rav Usher's friend, Yibad L'chaim, who states at the same point through a powerful parable, two paupers named Reuben and Shimon lived next door to each other. They each knew about the other's plight and always tried to help one another. One day, a rich relative of Reuben came to visit him and gave him $1,000 to help him get on his feet. When Shimon heard about this, he asked Reuben if he could please share the money with him. Reuben was uncomfortable with this idea. "This is my money. It was given to me." Reuben felt possessive and was unable to share. Now, imagine a different scenario. Imagine if Reuben's relative would have left instructions. "I see that you and your neighbor Shimon are living in abject poverty. Here's $1,000. Please keep $800 for yourself and give Shimon $200 just to help him out too." Reuben would have been more than happy to share. In that case, he wouldn't have seen himself as the owner of the money. Rather, he would have simply been fulfilling the instructions. This is exactly the point of Chos Halovos. Hashem gives us money, not for our own sakes, but so that we could share it with others. We are treasurers whose job it is to give out to those in need. The issue becomes when we see ourselves as owning the money. This is when we try to keep it all ourselves and have trouble parting with it. That's the perspective we're looking for when it comes to money. Again, a very touchy subject. Chos Halovos continues. One may have money, thanks to one who has money, thanks Hashem for making him a messenger to grant kindness to others. If he loses all of his money, which would normally cause people to react with devastation, the Baal Bitachon thanks Hashem, who now took back his Picard and his collateral, just as he thanked Hashem for giving him the wealth in the first place. So when we see ourselves as the custodian, it's a very different perspective. He does not look with jealousy towards others who still have their money. Normally, if someone loses their money, says Rav Asher, he has a negative view towards others. Chos Halovos is telling us that the Boteach lives with tranquility. I want to share a couple of quick stories that I think bring out this point, like I always do, try to share. So I got hold of this new book called Noach Weinberg, and I was wondering, I really wasn't that wondering, why it was put out by Mosaic Press, because I'm sure that I thought to myself, Art School for sure would have put this out, or Feldheim, or someone else. So why Mosaic Press? Because obviously the answer is because there's lots of controversial things in there, which there are, which is why I'm enjoying the Sefer. And he was a very, very out-of-the-box type of man. So I want to tell you a couple of stories about Noach Weinberg, and I think that the editor, who's Yonason Rosenblum, himself a Baal Tshuva, and he writes very proudly about his knowledge and lack of knowledge about Noach Weinberg before he started this 10-year project. It's also very dear to me because Rav Usher, that's all, learned in his original kollel and actually was interviewed for this book before he passed away about Rav Noach, who passed away in 2006, who was a friend of his. Anyway, and I also heard a lot of this Hespedim live from Rav Aaron Feldman, who was his roommate in Eretz Yisrael. So he was a very, very great man. This is actually a picture, if you could see it. I don't know how well you could see it. That is Rav Yaakov Weinberg, the Rosh Yeshiva of Eretz Yisrael, when he was in his Yerushalmi garment, because they lived in Israel for a little bit, and Rav Noach Weinberg, his little brother, sitting next to him. And you could see the affinity there that lasted for a lifetime. Anyway, so Rav Noach Weinberg was actually named after his grandfather, whose name was Noach. And Rav Noach's father's name was Yitzchak Matziyahu. Yitzchak Matziyahu was married 3 times, which is a whole different discussion in itself. But his third wife, Hinda, was actually the mother of most of his famous children. So suffice it to say, he was born in, I think, 1880. He had moved to Eretz Yisrael with his family, and he owned a flour mill. He was a big Talmid Chacham. He owned a flour mill, and in about 1915, he had turned on his flour mill, and he put up a lot of signs that said, "Danger, please don't come here." But there were a lot of Arabs that would still go swimming there and do their laundry. And even though he put up signs, people ignored his signs, and they would go near the flour mill. Well, one day, tragically, an Arab girl was doing her laundry, and she got swept into the current, and she got killed by the mill. And because of this incident, he found out from the authorities that they were planning to try him. The Turkish authorities owned Israel back then in 1915, and he found out that they were going to try him, and they were probably going to throw him in jail and blame him for the event, even though he had followed exact code. So he ran away to Egypt, and he had to figure out what to do. He ended up escaping to America and bringing his family with him, although it took him many years, which is a whole different story in itself. Anyway, there's another version of the story that the Arab family was after him to kill him. So Rav Noach used to say, imagine if I would have grown up in Eretz Yisrael, because he was born in America in 1930, after his parents already moved there. So he says, imagine if I would have grown up in Eretz Yisrael, I would have been insular. I wouldn't have known about assimilation. I wouldn't have known about college. I wouldn't have known about English. He would have been able to fulfill what he fulfilled in life. Imagine if Rav Yaakov Weinberg would have lived there. He never would have came to Ner Yisrael or learned under Rav Hutner, or made such an impact. Their sister Chava, she was the only American girl to ever join Sarah Schneer. Her father was so enamored. Rav Yitzchak Monticello was so enamored by Sarah Schneer that he sent his daughter Chava to learn in Beis Yaakov. And Chava, so she's a very interesting lady. She was very outspoken, just like all Weinbergs, by the way. She watched on her trip there. She watched anti-Semitism in the 30s taking place in Germany already, and she actually stood up and tried defending and yelled at someone in English, even though they didn't know what she was talking about. Yelled at a conductor who was, hurting a Jew. But anyway, her Chava actually married. Was actually the mother of Shimshon Pincus. That's all. So Chava was the first and only American girl first, I would say, American girl to join, not the only, to join Sarah Schneer. And Rav Yitzchak Monticello wrote a letter to Sarah Schneer saying that have you ever wondered why it is that when Elisha found out that Eliyahu was dying, so he asked his Rebbe for a bracha, and he said a very strange thing. He said, I want pishtayim bruchacha, I want double your greatness. So how do you say that to a Rebbe? I mean, everyone, there's a certain blessing that we hope that our students and our children will surpass us and be better. I get that, but what was that coming from? So he said that some of the Mefarshim explain that the pshat is that Elisha saw that the generation he lived in was a very, very perverse one and a very, very difficult one. And so he needed to get that investment inside him to make him a better person. And so that's what he was telling his Rebbe, please give me double. And so Yitzchak Monticello wrote to Sarah Schneer a very famous letter and said, I'm sending you my daughter Chava. Please give her pishtayim bruchacha. She needs to have double your Yerushalayim because things are only getting worse for Jews in assimilation, and she has a lot she has to accomplish in her life. And again, she married an alter mirror, Rav Avram Pincus Zatzal, who actually died only a few years ago. I remember when he passed away. And he had escaped Shanghai, and they had Rav Shimshon Pincus, who was actually one of the original people that joined Rav Noach Weinberg's Kol in Eretz Yisrael also. But anyway, so all these people did great things, and imagine, here Yitzchak Monticello in 1915 is thinking to himself, I'm 35 years old, I'm on my third marriage. His first wife died in child labor. His second wife was divorced, and his third one was his final. Hinda was actually a very, very fascinating woman, real Weinberg blood. She actually was a fundraiser for MTJ Yeshiva, but we'll save that for a different time. But anyway, so Rav Noach Weinberg says, that there was a big zechus there, that they came to America and became the people they became. So what happened was Rav Noach eventually became very, very enamored with the idea of starting a kiruv program and bringing people back to Avinu Shemaim. And in 1953, he got on a boat to go to Eretz Yisrael, and he wanted to discuss his ideas with the Chazon Ish. He was very, very passionate about this. And unfortunately, while he was on the boat, he got the news that the Chazon Ish died, literally while he was on the boat. Chazon Ish died in 1953. So anyway, he decided he was going to come back. He literally was about to turn around. There was no reason for him to be there anymore, but he ended up staying there for a little longer. Anyway, so when he started his program, so he asked Rav Hutner, his Rebbe, he said, give me advice. What should I do? So Rav Hutner gave him 3 brilliant pieces of advice that are very smart. So he said, here's 3 rules. Number 1 is, when you're doing kiruv, never talk about Gehenim, which is interesting because Rav Usher always said this also. Never talk about Gehenim. Talk about how beautiful Torah is and how it enhances your life. You're not going to get anyone by threatening them. Talk about how Torah enhances your life, which is an amazing insight in itself. He said, number 2 is never expect any gratitude whatsoever. As a Rebbe, as a parent, as anyone, but especially in the kiruv world, don't expect any gratitude. People are not going to appreciate what you're doing, but do it anyway, which is amazing because you have to work selflessly. And that Rav Noach said he followed to a T, those 2 things. He really embodied. The third one he didn't follow, although Rav Hutner himself learned it out of his own bad experience. Rav Hutner said, you need to be in charge. There's no one else that's in charge. Don't take any partners. Just you're in charge yourself. And this Rav Hutner himself had a horrible experience with in his own yeshiva. And again, not to disparage any other Talmidei Chacham, but sometimes when you have someone that's so original, they just can't function or work well with other people sometimes. And Rav Noach did not follow this advice. He ended up starting Shema Yisrael, or what it was really, or basically the beginning of Or Sameach, which is, I wouldn't say his rival yeshiva, but a different yeshiva. He started Or Sameach together with Rav Nathan Schiller and Rav Mendel Weinbach and a number of other colleagues, three specifically, most famously, and it ended up being a disaster to a point that they respectfully had to go to a din Torah to find out, because they had such diametrically different approaches to Kiruv that it just couldn't function. And so someone one time asked Rav Noach, what was the most difficult time in your life that you yourself didn't have bitachon? And so he said, when that Bezdin poskin that I was the one in the wrong, and the three Rabbanim, who were my good friends, would own the yeshiva, and I needed to leave because I was making waves. This was in 1976. So he said, I was shot. He said, I lost friendships, I lost my Talmidim, I lost everything. And he said, the 15 seconds it took me to leave the Bezdin with that psak till I got to the curve and count myself. He said, I know what it means to not have bitachon, but then I said, I'm going to make a life for myself. And he came home, and his wife, Dina, who was a phenomenal Kiruv woman herself, and she shav refuah shlema, she actually had COVID-19. I heard that she's doing better, but she was a great woman. She said, let's build a yeshiva in the old city, which was crazy, but that's what they ended up doing. And Aish HaTorah is probably the most stable yeshiva out of any Kiruv yeshiva. They have multi-million-dollar endowments, and they own 40% of the Kotel Plaza. In fact, Mr. Hochberg, the Hochman or Hochberg, the guy who owned that plaza, the reason that he sponsored it, aside from the millions that he gave, is he said that he believes that when Mashiach comes, they're going to walk through the Aish HaTorah walls to get to the Kosel, which makes perfect sense. But anyway, so one of the amazing things that everyone said about Rav Noach was that aside for the millions, multi-millions that he pumped into the yeshiva to become Klal Yisrael's Kiruv machine, in hindsight, this thing that he had to split and make it his own literally became his greatest power. So we see in life that sometimes Hashem has different plans and pushes us into very uncomfortable places. And if you read through the book, you see that he was not successful at all. And in fact, he dated for a very long time. And Dina, his wife, even said that many girls were scared about his passion. And quite frankly, they didn't see very much talent in him. But she believed in him, and she held on, and she saw that he had greatness inside him. But he himself told her that, it's not going to be an easy life here in Eretz Yisrael, and it's not going to be an easy life what we're doing. And it was not an easy life. But anyway, so the Rebbeinu Shalom guides us to where we need to go. And I was really inspired by that. So one thing that everyone said was that Noach would give millions to other yeshivas too. He was a master fundraiser, and literally, if you were not even affiliated with him, if you called him and you asked him for help and you were a yeshiva, he held that building yeshivas is what builds Klal Yisrael. It wasn't just his yeshiva. Yeah, he was dedicated to his as well, and really cared about it. And he even told his last will and testament is literally, he just says to his children, no machlokas. This yeshiva belongs to Klal Yisrael. There's no fighting. It's Klal Yisrael's yeshiva, and that's how it has to be productive. Amazing visionary, and amazingly great man. Hopefully, share a couple more stories with him as well. But the bottom line is that we don't know anything in life, so we have to look at it with a bitachon lens. If Hashem gives us money, it's for a reason. It's not for us to hold on to and say, okay, how could I hold on to it for long term? It's for us to use. And Hashem gives us poverty or challenges or anything in between, that's for us to use. So we should be zocheh to grow and to have the right perspective when it comes to money, which is a great place where bitachon applies. Have a good week.
Oh man,